Let the pandas die. It may seem an extreme suggestion to let our greyscale neighbours go extinct, but it is a suggestion that is never too far when one goes to discuss the fate of our monochrome friends. According to some, they are lazy, inefficient, and worst of all, can't even be bothered to breed. We should perhaps expect such criticisms for what is one of the world's most instantly recognisable creatures. Like any good celebrity, their success was always bound to birth an army of ever-vocal detractors. Warranted or not, fame fuels strong opinions. With each viral video of a panda being frightened by a sneeze or rolling down a hill, their fan base becomes more loving and their critics more enraged. But is this a bear worthy of our attention, or a charlatan hogging the limelight? Pandas have unsurprisingly been well known in China for millennia, but it wasn't until 1869 that they first gained the attention of the West in the form of a skin. In 1916, the first panda was seen by a Westerner. In 1929, the first panda shot by a Westerner. And in 1936, the first live panda was finally brought to the West. From then on, the panda was set on its trajectory towards stardom, but at this point, it was already in trouble. Formerly occupying a range spreading throughout much of southern and eastern China, the giant panda had already undergone a huge westward retreat. Driven largely by increasing industrialization and cultivation, the panda has been in trouble for quite some time. In the West, the story of the panda since its inception has been tied to their struggles. They are a species defined by their rarity, forever on the precipice of extinction. With this, it is perhaps expected that some may question our efforts to save the panda. In the face of stacked odds, they see futility. But does the panda really deserve to be deserted? The most obvious charge against the panda is that they are poor breeders. Beyond the simple fact that they are endangered to begin with, they are famously aloof, apparently unwilling to even attempt to save themselves. It is important, however, to make sure not to get caught up with tabloid headlines and hyperbole. In fact, pandas breed fine, and the most obvious evidence for this comes from the fact that they have been doing it consistently for more than 3 million years. This means that they not only predate you and I as humans by more than 2.5 million years, but also coyotes, polar bears, and even Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat. Generally, evolution is not kind to creatures that fail to breed. Given pandas have existed for millions of years at this point, they have clearly been doing something right. With that in mind, the obvious question to arise is what has gone wrong. If pandas for 3 million years have been relative Ursa Casanovas, then why are there so few, and why are they in so much trouble? Determining how well or poorly pandas breed comes down to how and where it is being measured. Humans are undoubtedly good at breeding, as a current estimated population of 7.8 billion will attest. But humans are not good at breeding in all conditions. Put a pair of humans in the vacuum of space, or even more simply, on an ice floe in the Arctic, and they will undoubtedly struggle to do the deed. Put a pair of pandas in a cage, and they will likely struggle too. Conditions count. Never before in the panda's 3 million year history have they been asked to breed behind bars, and never before have they had a problem. Importantly, this is not to say that captivity is always bad for breeding. Many species flourish under such conditions, breeding at rates unmatched in the wild. And in recent years even the panda's fate has dramatically changed, but for a long time attempts floundered. Instead, it is simply to highlight that whilst the pandas may have known what they liked, it took their carers some time to catch up. Pandas are picky, and in the wild that is no cause for concern. For millions of years it was no cause for concern. As we have discussed, a species that refuses to reproduce is a species doomed to fail. While some would argue that this pickiness is exactly why we should dispose of our responsibility to them, I simply ask if it is right for them to be judged under conditions so alien. The only reason pandas have been placed in such a precarious predicament is because of our own actions to unbalance them. Our continued exploitation through poaching and habitat destruction left them on the brink, and now some would blame them for failing to hold on. The obvious example to compare is that of their cousin the polar bear, another icon of conservation, another victim of habitat destruction. Like the panda, breeding polar bears in captivity is far from simple. Like the panda, their wild populations are falling. But unlike the panda, few blame the Arctic bear for its demise. In conservation, marketing is key, and the story of the polar bear has been spread as one of victimization. It is our responsibility to protect them, as we are to blame for their struggle. The panda, otherwise a marketing hero, has been resigned to a sadder association. Ignoring our destruction and exploitation, the panda's tale has become one of ineptitude and personal failure. We shed our responsibility as it is their own fault. But can it ever be right to so clearly handicap our monochrome friends and then declare them failures? Having divided their lands and collected their pelts, surely the blame must lie closer to home. For many, acknowledging our fault in the demise of the giant panda can only go so far. In accepting our responsibility to pandas, having consigned them to such a struggling fate, one may still ask how far our support should be extended. The main issue here is one of competition. Conservation is costly, and funds are limited. In a world of incessant human plundering and exploitation, we have been left with many mouths to feed, and even if accepting that pandas are not at fault for their fate, some still think that they are taking more than their fair share. It seems an understatement to describe pandas as conservation icons. Featured in the logo for the WWF, the world's largest and most widely supported conservation organisation, their image has become synonymous with endangerment. Pandas need protecting. We all know that even if we don't know why. We bake for them, sponsor them, and even run for them. The panda, a marketing heavyweight, has little issue raising funds for itself. But what of the bell-mountain tree frog, the rufous-headed hornbill, or the aptly named desperate leaf chameleon? All are more threatened than the panda, but none receive anywhere near the attention. One could argue that the coverage given to pandas and subsequent donations they receive is disproportionate to their need, and instead we should focus on animals in more desperate need for help. Why not a new logo for WWF? Perhaps a bat? Or even better, why not a whole ecosystem? Before we jump to tear down our bear bunting or burn our panda onesies, it is worth considering two key points. Firstly, not all money raised by pandas is used by them, and secondly, even when it is, they are often not the only ones to benefit from it. As pandas breed relatively poorly in captivity, the key to their preservation is the protection of their wild habitats. As it happens, panda habitats are hugely rich in biodiversity, meaning they feature a large variety of animal and plant life. As a result of this, by protecting the panda's home, we will in turn be protecting and conserving thousands of other species, like the tarkin, golden monkey, and Chinese monal. In some ways, the often decried poor breeding of pandas in captivity and subsequent reliance on habitat conservation may actually come to the benefit of lesser known species. By protecting the panda and its habitat, we also protect many others. Focusing conservation efforts on a single species such as the panda does, however, have limitations. A recent study has suggested that whilst wild panda populations within protected areas have increased over the last 50 years, the distribution of large carnivores in those same areas has decreased hugely. Leopards and wolves have decreased their ranges by 81% and 77% respectively, whilst dholes have seen their distributions within those same protected areas shrink by a striking 95%. By focusing on the panda and its specific needs, sometimes the needs of others are missed, leading some to argue for a more ecosystem-focused approach. Even if focusing on panda habitat protection isn't the magic bullet to protect the species there, the panda celebrity and draw can be used in other ways. It is often far easier to convince people of the importance of saving specific species than saving the less tangible and more nebulous ecosystems that they exist in. Ultimately, it is the public that pay for conservation, and they are therefore the ones that our messages must resonate with. At this point, the importance of pandas and the money that they raise becomes clearer. Pandas are often described as flagships, a species able to serve as a symbol for conservation, providing a rallying cry. In their popularity, they are able to attract huge degrees of attention. Like a celebrity endorsement, their presence can draw crowds, and these crowds offer opportunity. Firstly, a charity fronted by a panda may well receive donations simply through that association. The charity supports pandas, so I support the charity. That money may well be used on projects completely unrelated to pandas, protecting species in greater need. These species would themselves have little chance of raising funds, but because of the panda, they are being funded nonetheless. Beyond the direct funding that pandas may provide, they also allow for the conversations that need to be had about conservation to occur. Raising awareness for endangered species is vital, but getting people interested can be difficult. Their celebrity status is often criticised, but the lovable black and white bears may well be the perfect vehicle through which conservation messages can be delivered. The great Baba Dioum once said, "In the end, we will conserve only what we love," and pandas are very easy to love. Some have tried to suggest that this love is unwarranted, that in their behaviour, their often exaggerated reproductive struggles, they are unworthy of our help. But such an argument is both unfounded and unhelpful. If people so easily fall in love with pandas, then why try and convince them otherwise? If anything, we shouldn't be attempting to convince people to care for pandas less, and instead simply care more for other species as well. There is much love to go around, much intrigue, much dedication. Is the best approach to saving species really by tearing others down? Notably, Dioum continued his statement saying, "We will only love what we understand. We will only understand what we are taught." Through pandas and their ability to draw eyes and attention, we're provided with a brilliant opportunity to do just that, to teach. There are many animals out there in desperate need of conservation, and with huge potential to be loved, but they just aren't known. In their ability to open doors, pandas need not be looked at as competitors, but as opportunities. Pandas deserve saving just as much as any other species. Whether you feel pandas are worthy of their fame is truly up to you, but it is important to remember that that fame helps more than just them, be it through funding or engagement. In conservation, decision making is hard. and what may look obvious is often not. People's opinions on pandas often seem partisan. They're either loved or hated. But with the role played by pandas being so complex, it is clear that when it comes to conservation, decisions are rarely black and white.